Let's talk about compassion. Compassion is something that's not well understood by many of us. Many people think that compassion is simply feeling sorry for others going through hard times, feeling pity for others who are facing obstacles and difficulties in their life, feeling sorry for other people who are suffering. This is not compassion. Compassion literally means to suffer together. Compassion comes from going deep into our own suffering, really understanding our suffering because we're not ignoring it anymore. We're not trying to avoid our own suffering. We're not trying to deny our own suffering. We're not trying to reject our own suffering. Compassion is actually born from accepting our suffering, from allowing our suffering, from being okay with our suffering. It's this acceptance, this allowance that we go deeper into our own suffering and be with our suffering. That we come face to face with our suffering and simply just be with it and feel it fully. That we stop running from it and turn towards it in the present moment. That we face it and feel it fully so that we can heal. When we simply be with our suffering and stop rejecting it, we come to this place of acceptance. It's from this place of acceptance that we can then allow and understand. And this place of understanding continues to grow. And we feel. And it's this feeling that provides the healing. And the healing is born out of love. So there's acceptance of our suffering. There's understanding. And then there's love. And it's when we've loved ourselves, when we feel this love fully, that it heals us. It heals us from our suffering. And this love it's the oneness, that we are all connected, that we are all one. We become so open that we're able to perceive this love. And it's this love that heals our suffering. And this love can grow and expands us and opens us up even further. So then we become even more perceptive, more sensitive. So not only do we feel this love, but this love opens us and expands us, and we feel the unity that we are all one, that there is only one being, that there is only one love. And we become so sensitive that we then feel the suffering of everyone else. We feel their suffering as our own suffering. The universal love, the unconditional love, it expands us. And then we feel the universal suffering, the suffering of humanity. As our own. So you can say that we transcend our personal suffering, but we're also sensitive to the suffering of others as our greater self. And we can feel the suffering of others as our own. Then out of this love, we simply love others. The nature of love is to love. We love others because we understand suffering, because we've been through suffering and we understand it. And we've loved ourselves to heal. We've healed our own suffering on a personal level, but on a universal level, we feel the suffering of others as our own. Then we simply act in loving ways, in compassionate ways, because we are feeling the suffering of others. So like the word compassion, to suffer together, we are then suffering with them. But it's not personal for us. It's impersonal. It's our greater self that's suffering. We transcend the small self, and now we have merged as the universal self. So we feel the suffering of others, and we can't help but want to relieve the suffering of others in any way that we can. So it's quite beautiful because we act in the world out of love. That becomes our only quality. That all the actions that we take, they're born out of love. They're born out of compassion. That we do not add to the suffering. Our actions now don't add to suffering. They're actions to relieve suffering. We understand that when we were suffering as the small self, that many of our actions added to the suffering of others. Because those who suffer typically make others suffer. Coming from a place of love, we are able to love others, and they feel this love. It helps them accept their suffering. It helps them understand their suffering, and it can help them heal from suffering, so they become compassionate as well. So you see, compassion is not this separation that you see others going through hard times and difficulties and experiencing misery and tragedy in their lives. And you say that they're suffering and you're not. Compassion is much deeper. It's in the depths of our heart as we open up and we find ourselves as this love, the universal love that is in everyone and every living being. We are more identified with this love than being a person, a separate self. We are now the universal self, the universal love. And by feeling the suffering of others, we can't help but love others as ourself. And this is the nature of compassion. Compassion, unconditional love. No judgments, no separation, only oneness, wholeness, completeness, unity. That any action comes from being love. It is the being love that is the essence of all compassion actions to relieve others of their suffering and help them find the love that is within them. That is what they are. So you see, until we accept our own personal suffering, until we understand our own personal suffering, until we've healed ourselves, there can be no compassion. Until we've opened up our heart, there can be no compassion. And once we open our heart, we start healing ourselves. And this is where compassion is born. It is born out of the heart. So this is where the misunderstanding of what compassion is. When it's coming from the place of other people are suffering, but not me. Other people are going through hard times, but not me. It's coming from this place of separation and avoidance and rejection and resistance to our own suffering. It takes maturity to stop running from our own compassion. From our own suffering. It takes courage to go face to face with our own suffering. And it's this maturity and courage, this acceptance and openness and allowance that starts to open our heart. And as we open our heart, we find love. We find love, and we experience the healing of love. The love heals us. And then we really understand how much suffering we went through and how we created that suffering for ourselves. And how suffering is the absence of love. So now, being this love, this unconditional, universal love, we can be in the world as that love. And give others exactly what they need, which is love. Because you can say that suffering is really just a cry for love. So there's many people in the world that are crying out for love. And once we've healed our own suffering, once we've found the love that's within us, that we are, we can be in the world as that love. And give others exactly what they need. To help them open up. To help them accept. To help them allow and understand. So they can find that love. Because you can't find love outside of yourself. Love is within you. So you see, compassion is much deeper than just simply thinking about others and the struggle that they're going through. It's feeling their suffering in every atom that you are. It's feeling that pain and that misery in the fiber of your being as yourself. So you can't help but want to love others. So compassion is really being unconditional love.